Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to unbox and take a first look at Tanto Monta from my friends over at GMT Games. This is designed by Carlos Diaz Navarez with graphics provided by Ivan Caceres Cruz. And I do apologize, I'm pretty sure I've probably mispronounced both of those names. This game is for 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in about 3 to 7 hours. It is available right now, and it does carry an MSRP of $95. All right, all that said, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Tanto Monta. Before we dive in, do want to mention my friends over at GMT Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this coverage with you. These days, it's very important that you know that. So let's get the shrink wrap off. All right, come on. I was gonna say, that shrink wrap just doesn't want to come off. This looks really interesting because this is the rise of Ferdinand and Isabella. So this is part of the Here I Stand line, which you may recall years back I did review Here I Stand. In fact, I want to say it's actually a written review. That's how far back that review goes. And it's a very interesting system. It is a card-driven system, which of course I really enjoy historical card-driven games. So I'm going to read a little bit off the back here. Not all of this, but just a bit. Tanto Monta, The Rise of Ferdinand and Isabella, covers the period from 1470 to 1516, the height of the Age of Discovery, making it the prequel to the award-winning Here I Stand. This 4-player grand strategy game centers on the Iberian Peninsula, a land that has been splintered into numerous caliphates and kingdoms over the previous 700 years. Warfare, part of the desperate competition between Christian and Muslim faiths, often referred to as the Reconquista, has been the one constant. Now age 18, Isabella of Castile has been offered in marriage alliances to both Portugal and France. Against the wishes of her brother, she refuses both deals and instead elopes to marry her original betrothed, Ferdinand II. Very nice. All right, let's get this open here. So we've got our rule book. We've also got a scenario book. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to take a peek inside our rule book. And this is a relatively hefty rule book here. If you are familiar with Here I Stand, I do understand that about half of this rule book is pretty much the same as Here I Stand, but there are quite a lot of new additions because of the time period for Tanto Monta. So we get an introduction talking about the game board, the various different factions. I believe we've got Castile and Aragon, France, Portugal, and the Muslim powers. So we've got our military units, talking about our sequence of plays. So we've got our card draw phase, diplomacy phase, although not on the first turn, spring phase, winter phase, marriage resolution phase for the children of Catholic monarchs, starting on turn 3. And then we have a victory determination phase. So as far as the cards, if I remember correctly, we are looking at event cards where you play the event or you get operations points. So here we've got the spring phase. So we have headline events, as we see with many of the card-driven GMT games, harkening back to Twilight Struggle, one of my favorite GMT games. Some movement, field battles, siege. So this is a grand strategy game. I don't believe you're going to get into all the nuts and bolts of the battlefield during this time period. I'm sure that there's enough flavor here so that that time period does come through in the design. I just don't think we're going to see huge amounts of various different tactical options for each battle. It's just kind of looking through here. Seems like we had some naval forces, royal weddings. So starting on turn 3, in the 6th phase of the turn, the Spanish player resolves all the weddings he has arranged during the action phase. Talking about our major powers. We've got some examples of play. I would take a guess that our scenario book is also going to include a detailed example of play, unless we happen to have a separate playbook, but I doubt that would be the case. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a GMT game that included 3 books. So we've got our minors and independents. So it looks like we have a flow chart for, I believe it's diplomacy. So all in all, we're looking at about 62 pages of rules. So relatively hefty. I do know that this is ranked as a 6 on a scale of 1 to 9 as far as complexity goes for GMT Games. The solitaire suitability is extremely low because this is a 4-player game. It's not for 2 to 4 or anything like that. It is for 4 players. So here we've got our victory record sheet. So it looks like we've got a couple of record sheets here, so you can easily make copies of it. So that is the rule book. Here is the scenario book. Let's see what we've got here. So the various different scenarios. So we've got our setup guidelines and our recommended seating locations for each of the 4 players. So we've got the 1470 scenario, which will last 7 turns. So we have a 4-turn 1490 scenario. Kind of curious how the Age of Discovery is going to play out with the events. Very curious about what the event card deck is going to consist of. So we've got an example of one of the scenarios here. Oh no, I'm sorry, I take that back. This looks like an extended example of play. So going through each of those various different phases it looks like it's in the first turn. So it looks like it's a full turn that we get as an example of play. We've got designer notes, tactics for each of the players, types of units. We've got home cards, cards and resources. One aspect of historical card-driven games I always enjoy are the sections in the playbooks or scenario book in this case, where it explains what each of the cards represents. I always love that. So we got the game as history. So going through, looks like a year-by-year timeline and how the game design and probably the event cards coincide with what was taking place during each year. So we've got some notable battles which would have taken place during each of these game turns. We've got characters. So these are our main players for each of the factions. It's like we have counters representing these individuals as well. I am very intrigued. This looks very, very cool. I'll be very, very honest, though. I don't think I'll be able to get this to the table simply because I don't have 3 other players who are that deep into historical board games or war games that I could rely on them to play this 3 times in order for me to review it. So that is unfortunate. So let's see what we've got. Looks like we've got quite a few tables and possibly player aids. So we have a diplomatic influence table, single-sided. Our French player aid. Looks like they have special victory points for various different things, bonus victory points, as well as base victory points, which probably every faction gets. And we got our sequence of play giving us a breakdown here. So we've got the Muslim player. Same thing there. The Portuguese player. And then we also have the Spanish player. So each of those factions gets a player aid. We have a royal weddings table and a diplomatic status display. Single-sided there. We get a table sheet. So we do have exploration. So Terra Incognita, that's cool. Piracy on the exploration map, piracy on the main map. And we have another sheet with various different tables. Mandatory events required in the winter phase during each of the turns. Replacements for leaders and rulers and substitutions. And it appears we have 4 of these. So each of the players are going to get their own copy of this. Nice. It's like we have faction mats. So here is France. So we have Louis XI. Available actions for the French. Fortresses. North Sea trade. It's like victory points. Used home cards. Victory point markers. Nice. It appears that this game will require a good amount of space at your game table. And I can tell from the weight of the box that this does have a mounted board. We'll be looking at that in just a few moments. But here we've got the Muslim board, then the Portuguese, and Spain. I would think in this game during this time period, I think France is probably sort of a sleeping giant. It's just the impression that I get that France might be a very interesting faction to take the helm of. Of course, the game is centered on Spain, but still, I think I should take a guess that all of the factions should be pretty interesting to check out. So as you can see, we've got a lot of various different cards there, card stock sheets, I should say. So here we've got our different counters, and we've got quite a few punch boards. Take a little closer look. So we got military units there. Looks like this is probably control markers of some sort. For the Spanish, dual-sided on these, I would figure. Yep. So we have this. Wonder if each of the factions is going to get their own punch board. I would not be surprised. So here we have, I think these would be the Muslims. So the Muslim forces here. Although we do see Portugal, France. So it looks like these are maybe merchant ships. They certainly don't look like warships. I could be wrong. So it looks like these might be French forces. We might have some independents as well. Some minor powers that have units here. Or we may have the Muslim forces with various different color counters here, because they are different factions within the Muslim world, I believe. Once again, this is a first look. Very nice. We actually have a couple more counter sheets to take a look at. So we do have a good number of land units. And then here we've got some of the individuals, some informational markers. Looks like these counters are really well done. And of course, as with all counter sheets from GMT Games, got a good thickness on these too. So we've got that. Looks like we've got a good sized board. So give me a moment here. I'm going to try to get some stuff out of the way and see what we can fit in one shot. It appears that this is a relatively long board. It is. So it is 2 panels high and 4 panels wide. Let me get this unfolded here. So, of course, it's the area of the Mediterranean. Over here we got the central Mediterranean. So we have tracks up here. Here we've got the Pope. So throughout Italy into France, down here into the African continent. Then, of course, we have Castile, Aragon, Portugal. Once again, more of the African continent here. We've got a box for the Canary Islands. It looks as if these are probably trade routes with these blue lines. Very nice. And this board is nice and sturdy. And here we've got our victory point track that's going to run through here. Got our turn track. Looks like we put returning units there. So we've got all of that. And then last is a bunch of cards. We also have a few 6-sided dice in various colors for each of the factions. Looks like each faction gets 3 6-sided dice. A bunch of baggies for all of our counters. And then we've got the decks of cards. So what I'm going to do is zoom on in so we can get a much closer look. That is all the same deck. As is this. So I'm wondering, since we have such a pretty wide time period, I wonder if we seed the deck at all. So here, as an example, we've got the 5s up there. Are those for turn 5? Or are those like operation points? I wonder. Or command points, whatever they're going to be referred to as here. I think that might be command points, because I'm not seeing a 7 in here. Nope, that must be it. So we're not going to look at all of these cards, but we'll take a look at a few. So, Portuguese explorations. Oh, wait, here we go. Up there in the corner. There's our turn. So some of these don't have a turn on them, but as an example, this says turn 3, turn 4. So maybe we don't actually break this up into various different decks. And of course, each player is going to have a hand of cards. So it might be that you can't play this until that turn or later. That's a possibility. So we got the Barbary Pirates. We've got Sixtus IV, Pope. So we have mandatory cards. So I'm wondering if it's mandatory that you play this in the turn that you get it added to your hand. Could be. So it looks like we've got quite a few mandatory cards. We're hitting a patch of those. Manuel I, King of Portugal. Turn 4. Turn 5, Julius II, Pope. Arquebusiers, favorable terrain. So these are combat cards. Fierce defense, response cards. So I would take a guess, you play this in response to another player's event. Nobles return home. Torrential rains. Military highlights, no event. So I do notice some of these cards are giving you options of a few different things. So here, Portuguese explorations, we get this or that. Here, it looks like we've got 3 options. That's cool. Let's take a look at a few more. Famine, Holy War, Poisoned Wine. Select the leader counter on the map and place it on the turn track. He re-enters play during the card draw phase of the next turn. Henry the Navigator. Without previous declaration, choose an unfortified settlement in ocean zones 1, 2, or 3 that both belongs to an opponent and is in an ocean zone you've successfully explored. Eliminate it and place one of your own in its place. Great drowsiness. The Plague. Machiavelli's The Prince. Ottoman-Venetian War. So it looks as if we have over 100 cards which make up this deck. All right, so we have got the 2 decks of cards. Of course, we have a cool insert, as we normally see with the GMT Games boxes. So we've got the 2 decks of cards, the dozen dice, the baggies, the 6, I think it was. Yes. 6 punch boards of counters, counter sheets, however you want to refer to them. Let's not forget that mounted board. All these tables, the scenario book, as well as the rule book. And that is what we find when we take everything outside the box of Tanto Monta from GMT Games. Very nice. This looks very, very cool. I will do my best to somehow possibly get this to the game table, but these days it is rather difficult for me to get war gamers together, especially for a game that demands 4 players. There is no option for fewer players. I did not see any sort of AI as far as other players like an AI player. So it is for 4 players. So it will be a bit tough for me to get this to the table. But regardless, this looks very, very unique. And of course, if you are a fan of Virgin Queen or Here I Stand, then by all means, this should be on your radar. Once again, this is available right now from GMT Games. It does carry an MSRP of $95. I mention this all the time when I talk about GMT Games. If you have any interest whatsoever, say in Tanto Monta or any other GMT Games release, don't wait around to decide to pick it up because the print runs aren't huge. So if it's something that you're interested in and you hold off and it sells out, then you're stuck waiting a couple of years or more for another print run for the most part. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this first look, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, here's hoping all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.